This is Toby Capwell, curator, author, historical advisor, and all-round expert on historical arms and armour. And I'm your host, Dave Jewett, and we are back in Bohemia to check out more of the incredible Kingdom Come Deliverance 2.
So this is Jan Žižka.
Yeah.
Jan Žižka is like a Czech national hero. Hugely, hugely important figure, but like a lot of medieval people, there are gaps in what we know about his life. And in this period of the game, in the first decade of the 15th century, there's a lot we don't know about his life. So it's really clever of the game to put its story into that gap in the historical record.
We have more videos with Toby coming up very soon, including one covering Monster Hunter Wilds and the awesome Warhammer animations. All of those will be landing on our Patreon 1 week early, so for early access, extended editions, and so much more, be sure to check out our Patreon, link in the description below.
That is impressive.
With that out of the way, make sure you like the video if you enjoy, and now I will throw it over to Toby.
So that's the main character here?
No, this is the main character pulling up on his right.
Oh, right. Okay.
The guy who's in the more resplendent armor is your lord, Lord Hans Capon.
There's a nice relationship between the two of them. There's a nice sense that they belong together, but you can immediately see the status relationship of one of them being higher ranking than the other.
Yeah, Henry, you're the role of bodyguard, advisor, good old chum, and that's your horse Pebbles.
Oh, nice. Nice looking horse. This immediately, right from the beginning of the game, shows you that they've thought a lot about not just the accuracy of the equipment, but also the range of quality and the way armor of slightly different status would be set up and what the overall effect would be. And how do you use all of that, the horse equipment, the armor, the clothing, to tell the story and to express the characters. They need to tell you here who is the lord, who's the nobleman, who is the retainer or the bodyguard. The lord is Armigerous. That means he's a knight. He's someone who is legally entitled to display a personal coat of arms, where you essentially write your name in colors and images on your gear, on your horse, on your shield, whatever. But that heraldry, that coat of arms, is personal. You can't just start plastering it all over everybody. Nobody else can wear your coat of arms. But they haven't done, it's easy to mistake heraldry for team colors or, football kit or something. And it doesn't work like that at all. It's saying who you are in a very specific way. But there's a reference to the relationship here because his breastplate, his body armor, is covered with a material that's basically the same color as the Lord's field of his coat of arms. So there's a nice little sense of a relationship there and a team mark, which is also used to color the other soldiers in different ways without misusing the coat of arms. That's really nice. And the Lord's armor is a better quality than the bodyguards. Although the bodyguard's equipment is perfectly fine, it's not the absolute best. And all of this stuff kind of works nicely on your imagination.
Oh, I hope they've got a good physician at this castle. Or at least a barber.
After that scene where you were sparring with your lord, you take a bath in the nearby pond and bandits set upon your party, kill your party. You're stranded, wearing nothing but your underwear, basically. You get injured, you have to flee. You flee into the woods, escape, and some healing woman from the woods, some herbalist, takes you in, helps you recover, but you are just wearing rags at this point. And the plot is you're supposed to be delivering a message to another lord. So you try to go to the castle where the lord resides, but you don't exactly look like a lord and his retainer anymore. And that's basically the opening to the rest of the game. You need to find more resources, more armor, money, find someone who will take you in as a lord, convince someone that you're a lord. But before all that, the first time you meet someone of some status or visit a castle, this is what happens. So this is after you've lost your party, lost all of your equipment, all of your armor, all of your money, everything.
It's formidable when you're not being invited in.
That's really the major plot point. No, we don't know who you are. And now you're covered in shit. This goes to what you were saying, I guess, about the heraldry. Without that, there's no pictures of Hans Capon. They wouldn't know who he is.
Or any way of, it's a profoundly visual culture. You have to look like who you are. It's an expectation of that. And this is a nice inversion of that. They've shown you what he usually looks like as a knight, but to show what happens when all of that gets taken away is really clever, because the story is reinforcing the underpinnings of the game, that you have to get this gear to be who you are. Without the gear, you're nothing, you're nobody. And, a knight is a function of his armor, his weapons, his martial skills, his horse. When you take all of that away, he's just a person. That's an extraordinary way to open the game, actually. Your deeds and your abilities will speak to who you are as well, but it takes an awful lot to override the lack of the appropriate appearance.
Hans, look at me. Hans!
You get very bloody throughout this game.
Yeah, no, but that's a real thing. It's a real thing, but it's a really hard issue to deal with in the visual media, because the reality of it is pretty bloody. But in a kind of structured production or presentation, often if you put too much blood on, it just starts looking like Monty Python or something.
Just a flesh wound.
And real blood, when it's spattered onto polished steel, can look really bright red and kind of fake. It's not what people expect blood to look like sometimes. So there's all kinds of inherent problems with portraying the reality of this when the expectation is kind of uninformed somehow, or when there are other existing Monty Python media tropes.
All right, we'll call it a draw.
So I see they've gone with it, but it seems like they're pulling it off pretty successfully.
Well, even outside of combat, if you're covered in gore or mud or a combination of both, people out in the world will respond to you differently.
Oh, of course.
People might fear you because you look so hellish. But if you're all shiny and resplendent, they might perceive you as more noble. It can be advantageous to go to a water trough and wash all of this viscera off you, because people will respond to you differently.
There are also several 14th and 15th century texts that specifically describe the mirror-polished surfaces of the armor as being frightening. It's scary to see this glittering being. It's like an alien shining with this kind of divine radiance. A couple of texts I've worked on in my most recent book where it specifically says the English love polishing their armor because they believe it makes them more frightening to their enemies. So, it's also interesting to try and understand how people at the time saw it. Yes, it's beautiful, but it can also be terrible and scary at the same time.
We'll surely get a nice fat ransom for Lord Capon Touchdown.
This is the introduction to Jan Žižka.
Oh, great. I wish they hadn't uncovered his throat there. I know he has to do this big dramatic scene and he has to be able to speak, but his aventail should be covering his chin and throat. You should never see a bare throat. If you see a bare throat on armor, there's seriously something wrong. So this is Jan Žižka.
Yeah, you don't know it yet, but yes, this character is Jan Žižka.
That's amazingly interesting, because Jan Žižka is like a Czech national hero. Incredibly famous, in Eastern Europe, of course. He was a Hussite, a follower of Jan Hus in this sort of proto-Reformation movement in the early 15th century. Hugely, hugely important figure, but like a lot of medieval people, there are gaps in what we know about his life. And in this period of the game, in the first decade of the 15th century, there's a lot we don't know about his life. He was living a kind of Robin Hood sort of existence. He does seem to have been a bandit and kind of a soldier for hire in this exact period. But it's a kind of a black hole in his biography. So it's really clever of the game to put its story into that gap in the historical record. That's when kind of historical fiction is at its best, when it's totally working within what we know, but it's trying to move towards what we don't know, trying to reveal something, put some light into the dark parts of the past. And so, they don't have to worry about contravening the historical record. They have quite a lot of freedom to tell a story in the game because this is a period in his life when not a lot is known. But for him to appear in this game is, I think, certainly for people in Czechia and whatever, must be a pretty big deal. And of course, he's not blind yet.
That's something the game plays with very well. Because I saw the statue in Prague, and he's wearing a bandage over his eye during in that statue.
Well, he's most famous for being blind in both eyes. Later in his life, he lost an eye in a siege, but he'd been blind in one eye for years and years and years, and nobody actually knows how he lost his first eye. The second one is fairly well documented. The first one, nobody's really sure what happened to him. So the game kind of, again, slots right into that. Presumably you can't kill Jan Žižka.
No.
But he might have just lost an eye.
Yeah, the duel ends with you wounding his eye. And at the end of this duel and then learning who his character was, I was like, oh, that's really clever. They've given an answer as to how he lost his eye. And then later in the game, you see him with the bandage. And then later, he's healed and he can see through both eyes again. And so it was like a red herring as to the explanation of how he lost his first eye.
Yeah.
And then further in the game's version of events, he does unavoidably lose his eye.
But here in the game, it gives them the chance at least to give you that classic image of a one-eyed knight, which is synonymous with Jan Žižka's reputation.
This is after the game, after all the dramatics. So, spoiler alert. This is how the game portrays him losing his eye for good this time. So you've won your great victories, you're having a great time with your allies, drinking, eating. But he's sporting the scar you give him in the game still.
It's kind of good that you aren't the one who wounds him in the duel. I mean, that would be it's kind of a fun thing to play with, but I'm kind of glad that he gets better from that. It would almost be too much.
So this character, Dry Devil, renowned marksman.
Weapons and drinking never goes well.
Shout out to Kubienko, who insists on wearing the helmet, at the very least, to try and help.
Oh, this is a bad idea.
So that's how, or at least in Kingdom Come's timeline, or Kingdom Come Deliverance's 2 version of events, that's how Jan Žižka officially loses his left eye. But again, nice that they play with it or theorize what could have happened, add it to their narrative.
If you're enjoying this episode, we have plenty more where this came from over on our Patreon. Each and every episode has its own extended director's cut edition where we dive even deeper into games, movies, and real-world history. By becoming a patron, you can watch the director's cut of this episode, plus all of our previous episodes right now. Patrons also get every video 1 week early, and there are other cool perks like podcasts and Discord access. Each patron directly supports the work we're doing here at EXP, but whether you follow our Patreon, subscribe to us here on YouTube, we appreciate you watching, liking the video, subscribing, all of that good stuff. And now we'll get back to the video.
Quickly barricade the gate! Hurry! Load up everything you get your hands on. Stones to the wall! All weapons to the gate!
So at this point in the game, you've realised that you and Jan Žižka are on the same side,
right,
allied with him. You're defending against a siege.
And sieges usually, historically, could go on for quite a long time. I mean, how do they deal with the amount of time involved in a siege and the huge periods where nothing is happening?
This siege in particular is a very quick one, and it's explained how it's a quick one. Later in the game, there's a siege that takes place over a number of weeks. That you actively have to play through, and you have to deal with everything from fatigue and hunger, not just defending the walls. But there are like 20 individuals within this fortress at the minute, and you saw the army that's approached.
Well, they should be able to. You shouldn't need that many people to defend a good fortification. But you need some, and they need to know what they're doing. Yeah, these overhanging hoardings on a fortification are really important. That in order to get to the walls, you have to go under the hoardings, and you're exposed in exactly this way to defenders above.
You can buy a fancy helmet, but it's nothing against good old rock.
Big rocks. There's a lot to be said for rocks. I mean, and knightly manuals often deal with the use of rocks as weapons. It's an important skill. So now you have to stay with Jan Žižka here,
Yeah.
right? Your job is to stick with him.
Yeah, clearing out the battlements.
Yeah, that's a nice touch. I mean, because knights are trained to work in teams. A lot of your effectiveness, certainly when you're fully armored, is to work as part of a small team. That's one really good way of overcoming the limitations in your awareness and your mobility and your ability to see. You work in teams, you can help protect each other. So it's nice to see that in the gameplay. And knights become very vulnerable when they're isolated. But if they're working as part of a team and they know what they're doing, it's very, very hard to beat. Oh dear. See, someone always has to bring gunpowder weapons and ruin everybody's fun. They can't let that just sit out there. They're gonna have to go out and stop that. Unless it blows up, of course.
And that's why that siege was short-lived.
That's also why most of the castles around the world are in ruins. Your armor is good protection against things like that happening as well. Jan Žižka will have taken note of this because the Hussites were famous for their use of wagons and like building mobile fortifications bristling with gunpowder weapons out of wagons, the so-called Wagenlager, mobile castles or fortresses on wheels. Chain the wagons together, put lots of gunpowder artillery in there, and it's pretty formidable. So maybe this is where he learned a bit of a lesson about the virtues of artillery.
That's not Sigismund.
I can see Prague colors.
This is a siege that takes place towards the end of the game, and this is the siege that takes place over a number of days, like 2 weeks, and you see the effects. I don't think a game has portrayed the effects of a lengthier siege as well as Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 in this example.
So this is a bigger fortification.
This is a bailey, fortress, tower, castle, the whole 9 yards.
It's generally a bigger scale operation now.
You can also see that wall you mentioned earlier, bringing up a portable shield.
Yeah, they've got their pavisas, and you shoot over it and reload behind it. But you can see against these formations of pavisas, if you could get some light artillery on there, you'd be in business. So they survived the first attack. They're doing all right so far.
So far, so good.
See, he's got an aventail that's higher and protecting more of his neck, but it really should be covering the chin. And like him, that's good. That's what we want. But they leave them dangling open at the neck, I guess because they're worried about the characters being identifiable. But you can tell who that is. You can tell that that's still Jan Žižka. This trio here is good, okay, and terrible aventails all talking to each other.
We jump forward a whole 11 days. So here we've got a raid beyond the walls to try and disrupt some of the siege works
Very
and supplies.
Important. Yeah.
And we're basically just covering our infantry from the walls.
We haven't seen any fighting on horseback yet.
There's actually very little.
It's hard. It's probably one of the greatest challenges to the animator.
In my experience with the game, you can swing a sword from horseback, but it doesn't really work very well. Your horse is really there to take you from point A to point B a bit quicker and to carry your stuff.
If they could nail the fighting on horseback thing, that would be amazing because your horse is a very powerful weapon. In this situation, especially if the besieging army has cannon, the best thing to do is send a group of heavy cavalry out there as fast as possible, do as much damage as you can, and get back inside. Get squadrons of cavalry to go out there and chew the place up and then leave. So, Kingdom Come Deliverance 3. We need some serious equestrian combat for that.
So day 25, this is where the game really plays on the defenders being hungry. Food has all but run out, and that plays into the game by your character is actively hungry. There's a status effect of your hunger, and that lowers your stamina, which means that you can't fight for as long. So it's a real interesting representation of hunger during a siege.
That's an infinitely more common way of taking a castle than with an escalade.
So you can see they've filled in the moat and they've been able to get real close.
Oh, there's a thunderstorm now. Thunder and lightning. Lightning in Armour is not, it's not good. There are instances of people in Armour being hit by lightning. It's not good.
Assuming they don't walk away from that.
No. That's another really nice way of wearing one's coat of arms that you see in this game, where you have a little escutcheon, a little miniature shield placed right on the aventail, right over your neck, or sometimes almost right on the chin. It's like unmistakable. If you're seeing that person, you see their coat of arms.
Keep firing! Don't stop!
So, I mean, for context, this is the scene that the game opens with. This is the first thing you see when you boot up the game. I've placed, because this is towards the end of the siege and the story goes backwards, but I've placed it here because this is the through line of the entire siege.
But again, a very cinematic way of telling the story. And you see that and then wonder how on earth you're going to end up there. Nice to see them make a clear formation and then proceed in a controlled way. So many films, it's just random running around. Like if you just run faster, it's more exciting or something. But to see controlled, disciplined formations like that's really nice. But again, there's that false opposition of knights versus archers. Like knights are the ones who wear plate armor. Archers are the ones who just, have nothing or whatever. When actually, archers are a very diverse group of people. And there's some like archer bodyguards who had, again, as much armor as a knight almost. And certainly the majority of archers had some plate armor. Okay, so you were down on that outer wall of the timber fortification before, and now you're one level back and higher up.
Yeah. So over the course of about a month, they've pushed us further and further back.
Those little scale helmets, the skull caps made out of those little scales, that's another nice, really nice touch. Very typical of this period. I like that they've made the male links on his aventail, they're going the other way. Most commonly, they're seen with the rows arranged horizontally. Here they've arranged them vertically. And you do see that as a constructional variation in depictions. So that's how it starts, huh?
Yeah, and then it jumps back a few weeks to...
That's heavy.
When you're galloping so merrily into the lands, and then a couple hours later you're having feces thrown at you. It's a real roller coaster of a game. No,
it's a very as far as the narrative, it's very clever to show you where you're going to end up, but not how it's going to end.
I'm going to do a very quick look at the city of Kuttenberg, since the game's not portrayed a city before.
Oh, the best way to see a city, on the back of a horse.
But I think they've done a real beautiful job with the city. It features plenty of armor shops. That's where I got my nicer equipment.
What curator wouldn't kill to be able to go in a shop like that? It's kind of an interesting thing. You see these soldiers just walking around in the street. That helmet that soldier is wearing would be in pride of place in any museum today. But here they give you a wonderful sense. It's just the everyday material culture. But 600 years later, it's in the Metropolitan Museum of Art. But
this city, Kuttenberg, or Kuttenhora, has been very faithfully reproduced.
It looks amazing.
Like, having been there myself, it is quite odd when you're walking through the virtual version that you know where a street is.
You know it.
And
if you've played the game enough, you probably know it, right?
It feels eerily familiar. So this is a few comparison shots to the actual city that Chris shot. This one in particular, you can see that outward window is in the same place, but with its own decoration. That's the building.
Yeah, because that was added later.
And that's it. So any final thoughts you have about Kingdom Come?
Well, it's a totally new level. It's a new benchmark. These are trend setters, not trend followers. If I could give them a standing ovation, I would. And they shouldn't worry too much about my, little nitpicks here and there, because overall it's just a stunning achievement.
Thank you all for watching. We hope you enjoyed more Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 with Toby. Make sure you check out the description for links on how to support him and his works. And while you're down there, why not leave a comment telling us what games, movies, or experts you'd want to see on the show next. As always, a huge shout out to all of our supporters over on Patreon for supporting the channel and helping make these episodes happen. Like the video if you enjoyed, subscribe so you don't miss next week's episode, and as always, I will see you next time.
Rebel against the laws of God and of the city, whom nothing is safe.